Have you ever had one of those dreams? You know, you visit a place that feels so real, so familiar, you could swear you've been there before, but it just doesn't exist. You go back again and again. Well, today we're diving headfirst into these impossible worlds. We're going to journey from those recurring dreams all the way to mind-bending psychedelic landscapes, all to ask one massive question. Are these places just tricks of the mind, or is our brain actually tuning in to another reality? This quote from a Reddit user just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this feeling that thousands of people talk about online. And we're not just talking about random weird dreams. Nope. These are entire, detailed worlds that our minds seem to build from scratch and then let us visit over and over again. So that's the big question, right? What in the world are these places? Are they just, a complex remix of our memories and things we've seen? Or could they be something more? That's the mystery we're digging into. And what's so wild is just how common this is. You read these stories and people describe entire cities their brains have just invented, complete with landmarks and streets they know how to navigate. Or maybe they dream of their actual hometown, but the layout is completely different, and yet they instantly recognize it. In every single one of these stories, it's that powerful, unmistakable feeling of familiarity with a place you have absolutely never been that makes it so bizarre. Okay, so let's go deeper down the rabbit hole because this whole phenomenon gets a lot stranger. We're about to crank this investigation up a notch, leaving the world of dreams behind and jumping into the reality-shattering experiences people report after taking DMT, a hugely powerful psychedelic. The writer Sam Wolf described his first really profound DMT experience with these words, and listen closely to what he's saying. He doesn't just say it felt weird. He talks about a certainty that what he was seeing was breaking the laws of physics, like watching objects transform in ways that just can't happen. This isn't just a strange dream anymore. This is a head-on collision with the impossible. So how is that even possible? Well, a neurobiologist named Dr. Andrew Gallimore has this absolutely fascinating theory. He calls it the reality switch hypothesis. And the core idea is that DMT doesn't just make you hallucinate. It literally prompts the brain to switch channels, like on a TV, tuning out our normal, everyday reality and tuning into a completely different one. This really breaks it down perfectly. So, on the left, you've got channel consensus reality. That's our world, the one our brain builds to help us survive. It's stable, it's predictable. But on the right, Gallimore says channel DMT is a totally different ballgame. It's not a distorted version of our world. It's a complete and total replacement, filled with things users describe as having crystalline clarity and even populated by intelligent beings. The legendary ethnobotanist Terence McKenna, well, he put it even more bluntly. He described it as a 100% reality channel switch. And the key thing to get here is the totality of it. It's not a dream painted on top of reality. It's a brand new reality that completely replaces the old one, instantly. Okay, so if the brain really can switch realities, how does it do it? What's the mechanism? Well, to figure that out, we've got to explore this classic idea that reframes the brain not as the creator of reality, but as its gatekeeper. This is the reducing valve theory, made famous by Aldous Huxley. And the idea goes like this. First, you've got the mind at large, the entire universe of information that our brains are technically exposed to. But to stop us from being completely overwhelmed, the brain acts as a filter. What we're left with is consensus reality, what Huxley called a measly trickle of information that's just enough for us to survive. And here is where it gets absolutely nuts. Modern science seems to back this up. Brain imaging studies show that when people take psychedelics, activity in the default mode network, which is thought to be the brain's main filter, drops significantly. This basically opens the valve. The filter gets weaker, and all of a sudden, parts of the brain that don't normally talk to each other start connecting. It's like opening the floodgates to information that's usually blocked from our consciousness. So, what is this information that comes flooding in? To even begin to understand one of the most mind-blowing theories out there, we need to start with a very basic fact. Our entire experience, everything we know, is built on 3 spatial dimensions: length, width, and depth. That's our whole world. But here's the kicker. What if those 3 dimensions aren't the whole story? What if there are more dimensions of space completely invisible to our senses, but every bit as real as the ones we know? And look, this isn't just some sci-fi trope. String theory, which is one of the leading ideas in physics for a theory of everything, actually requires 10 dimensions for the math to work. That's 9 dimensions of space and 1 of time. The theory suggests these extra dimensions are just curled up so incredibly small that we can never perceive them. This higher dimensional space is what physicists call hyperspace. And this is where it all clicks together. Theorists like Dr. Gallimore are proposing that when the brain's filter is shut down by DMT, it's not just accessing some fantasy, it might actually be gaining the ability to process information from these hidden dimensions. It's getting a direct peek into physical hyperspace. I know, trying to imagine a fourth spatial dimension kind of makes your brain hurt. So to make this idea a little more intuitive, let's take a quick trip to a brilliant thought experiment from the 1800s called Flatland. So, meet our guy, A square. He lives in a world with only two dimensions, length and width. There's no up or down for him. From his point of view, every other 2D shape, even his own friends, just look like simple lines. Now imagine a three-dimensional sphere, an object from a higher dimension, decides to pay a visit. It passes right through the 2D plane of Flatland. What does A square actually see? Well, he can't see a sphere, obviously. His 2D eyes aren't built for that. What he sees is just the cross-section of it. So first, a tiny point appears out of thin air. That point grows into a line, which gets longer and longer until the sphere hits its widest part. And then the line shrinks back down to a point, and poof, it's gone. To poor A square, this thing has just broken every law of his reality. It's completely impossible. And this, right here, perfectly illustrates the shock of perceiving something new. When the sphere finally pulls A square up into the third dimension, his mind can barely even process it. He describes it not as seeing, but as pure knowledge, an entirely new world revealed in one overwhelming, reality-shattering moment. And that brings us right back to where we started. If a four-dimensional object passed through our 3D world, what would we see? Well, just like A square, we'd probably see a 3D object that could transform, grow, and vanish in ways that seem to defy our laws of physics. It would seem impossible. So, where does all this leave us? We've gone from these persistent dream worlds all the way to the possibility of literally seeing higher dimensions. And the central debate, of course, is whether any of this is real or if it's all just in our heads. You've basically got two main camps. On one side, you have the complex hallucination theory. This says the brain is just an unbelievably skilled artist, creating its most convincing and elaborate illusions. But on the other side, you've got the veridical perception theory, which argues that these are genuine perceptions of a reality that's normally hidden from us. Look, we don't have the final answer, not yet, but the question itself completely changes how we think about consciousness and even reality. Are these impossible worlds we visit just fancy tricks of the mind? Or is our brain occasionally tuning into a reality that is fundamentally bigger, stranger, and more dimensional than we can even begin to imagine? Maybe the answer isn't just in our heads, but in a place we just haven't learned how to see yet.